All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Miss Sue. And you are accompanied
Good
this
afternoon.
afternoon. Could you just introduce
Just attorney at law.
Chester Sue? All right, now I am to remind you, Miss Sue, and your legal counsel,
Yes, sir.
the hearing is going public. So I just want to advise you of that. This hearing is going public. You would have received correspondence inviting you to meet with the members of the Public Accounts Committee, some of whom are gathered here today. I just want to introduce them. Beginning at my extreme right is the Senator Nurse. To his left would be Minister Colin Jordan, Minister Lucille Moe, Minister Sandra Husbands, all members of the committee. 5 members constitute a quorum, so we are fully quorum. We have present with us some of the members of the staff of the Auditor General, led by Mr. Trotman, the Auditor General himself. And we have clerical and administrative staff of Parliament here. The media is also present in physical bodily form behind you. I would want you to be advised. The correspondence which we had sent out to you suggested that we would want to look at a number of matters. Further to tell you that we have agreed that our cutoff point for these sessions is 5 p.m. So we may in fact reach that in a hurry and not get very far with our interaction with you, and may have to ask your indulgence to come back again. But we wanted to look at matters relative to the process approved and the process employed for purchasing of parts, and how that contributed to the board's inability to repair buses and maintain an adequate fleet. Secondly, the repairs regime employed, re-bus transmissions, the acquisition of reconditioned transmissions, the issue of over-invoicing and overpayment for repair transactions, the status of one particular bus, BM506, and the status of a scenic tour bus purchase transaction, which, as I understand it, to date is still not completed. Those are the broad issues. We will have you to respond to us on the oath in a little while from now, as is provided for in the legislation. But just to remind you that the legal basis under which this committee is constituted and under which these hearings are heard is established in Cap 10 of the Cap 10, which is the Public Accounts Committee Act of Barbados, an Act of Parliament, and some other parliamentary legislation to which we can make reference if you so desire. The period of reporting on the review by the Auditor General is April 2015 to June 2018, and the investigations of the operations of the board suggested cause for concern about several matters during that period of operation. Under the Public Accounts Committee Act, I would need to remind you or to apprise you of a certain few facts. Section 17 states that a person summoned to appear before the committee shall not, without just cause, proof whereof shall lie upon him, refuse to be sworn or to make an affirmation, B, to answer a question put to him by the committee or by any member of the committee, or to produce a document which he is required by the committee or by a member thereof to produce. Section 19 states a person summoned to appear or appearing before the committee as a witness shall have the same protection and privileges as a witness in the proceedings in the High Court. Section 20 states any person who in the course of giving evidence before the committee willfully makes a statement material to the subject of the inquiry of the committee that he knows to be false or does not believe to be true, or where he is reckless as to the factual content of the evidence, is guilty of an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $25,000 or to imprisonment for a period of 2 years or both. In Section 21, a person who contravenes or fails to comply with Section 15, 16, 17, or 19(2) of the Act is guilty of an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine, similar fine, and similar period of imprisonment. We would have apprised you of this in writing, and I just wanted to remind you. Any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
At this time, we'll have you take the oath.
Good afternoon, Ms. Sue. Could you take the Bible in your right hand and read the oath, please? Raise your hand. Put the Bible in your right hand and read the oath, please.
The evidence that I shall give before the committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you. If during the course of the questioning you have need to make recourse to the advice of your counsel, please indicate, and we will pause to allow you to do that. All right. Any member of the committee wants to go first? Let's establish for the record your position at the time period under review, 2015-2018, and your responsibilities. In brief.
Yeah. My position, Mr. Chair, was that of financial controller. I have been employed at the Transport Board since April 2005. I acted as general manager from July 2018 to 2019. Please note that I was not the general manager during the period of the audit, 2015 to 2018. My duties, primarily as financial controller, consist primarily of management of the finance department so as to ensure the proper functioning of 5 sections initially, which were accounts payable and receivable, revenue, payroll, stores and purchasing, and statistics. Now, the latter 2, stores and purchasing, and statistics, were removed from my portfolio. Stores was removed in July 2015 and placed under the Quality Assurance Department, not finance. I was also responsible for producing monthly, quarterly, and annual financial statements and audit schedules, maintaining effective management systems, and preparation of the annual budget. So, Mr. Chairman, also just to reiterate that in your correspondence to me, you had indicated former general manager. I acted only after the substantive holder of the post parted company from the Transport Board.
Thank you. That's been clarified for us by the Auditor General's office.
Just a few details. Sorry, you said you were financial controller from when to when?
April 2005 until present. I only acted general manager from July 18th, 2018, after the substantive holder of the post parted company from the Transport Board.
Okay. And in the course of your role as financial controller, your duties would include the preparation of reports and drawing to the attention of management or the board any concerns or anomalies that you would have encountered in the accounts?
Yes, ma'am, that was so.
Okay. And do you have a list of things that you would have drawn to the attention of the board during the time that you were financial controller?
I have evidence of memos, emails that I would have written to the management of various sections, and particularly the Quality Assurance Department in this case, with concerns, yes. And secondly, I would have drawn any concerns I had at the management meetings, which we occasion from time to time, so the management minutes should so reflect.
What was the frequency of the management meetings?
They varied at the discretion of the substantive holder. They used to be weekly under the general manager when I first joined in 2005, but when the last general manager came, Ms. Sandra Ford, they were periodic, but generally monthly.
And were you invited to attend management meetings from time to time to give an account for something or to share information?
Management meetings were the purview of management. Now, the board meetings, which
Right.
were different from management meetings, were held occasionally, and I would not usually invited to board meetings under the last dispensation.
All right. Could you identify for us maybe 3 or 4 of the things that you would have drawn to the attention of management or quality assurance that would have been of concern to you as the person responsible for managing the finances of the authority?
I would have drawn the authorization procedures in the quality assurance department. That was an area that I had concern with. I wrote, as I said, memos. I also would have drawn that to the attention of the general manager. I also wrote about the recon transmissions. And thirdly, I would have mentioned several times at management meetings about the magneto system, for which there was no documentation, official documentation, until I acted as general manager.
Would you have any of these correspondence with you to which you can refer? Do you mind reading from 1 or 2 of them for us? And can we have copies after we're done?
Yes, sir. And a memo dated April 29, 2015, to the quality assurance manager and officer, and always copied to the general.
First manager is Mr. Codrington at that time?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Always copied to the general manager. And I refer to the examination of job sheets from service providers, and I made reference to correspondence sent to service providers requesting that job sheets for all completed work be presented to you. I asked to advise if this was being done by all service providers. I also wrote at that time about the entering of information into Magneto, and again I said effective April 1, 2015, I'm kindly requesting that all the detailed and relevant information of the job sheets received from all service providers be entered into Magneto. And I indicated this is to facilitate the integration of the Magneto and the APAC systems in order to allow for greater efficiency in data collection and recording. That was one, sir.
What would that would have been driven, that particular piece of correspondence would have been driven by a concern that practices which should have been adopted were not being adopted, not being pursued?
That is correct.
Okay.
I also wrote again on February 28, 2017, again to the quality assurance manager, and as again copied to the general manager, and I referred to quality assurance procedures, and I made reference at that point. I spoke to the requisition for goods and 2 levels of authorization. I also wrote about stock taking, Chair.
Go ahead.
And again, in July 2017, I wrote about oil usage by the Quality Assurance Department, and I made reference to asked for the procedures being used for the significant increase in the use of engine oil, and I attached a suggested recommendation for how it should be done.
Did you have responses from any, on any of those, from any persons addressed?
No, sir. There
No, no.
generally were no responses, and I wrote on several occasions.
Minister Moore.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Sue. Miss Sue or Mrs.?
Mrs. Good
Mrs. Sue.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. So you wrote these queries because of your concern about these procedures that you just spoke about not being perhaps followed or adhered to in the manner which you thought they should be. Who did you write to?
I wrote to the quality assurance manager at that time, would be
Just
Mr.
call-
Sylvan Codrington, and always copied to the general manager. I copied to the quality assurance officer, who was the second person in line, and I copied to the accountant, who is the second person in line in the finance department.
Okay, so there was a series of people.
Yes, ma'am.
And my other question on that is, you made reference to the magneto system being integrated, and I don't know if I'm using the correct term, but integrated with the AppPack system, so it would have a better accountability? Is that the rationalization behind it?
Yes, ma'am. The Magneto system, which is the web-based system which was designed in 2011, drew information from all departments. So the information from the Magneto system was pulled into AppPack to inform the preparation of the financial statements.
And this information was specific to accounting only, or to stock, or coming out of the Magneto system that then was going into your AppPack accounting system? What was the information primarily?
The Magneto system covered all the departments at the Transport Board. So in relation to quality assurance, this system would inform the quality assurance would make the initial entry of the invoices, work for buses that they would have done, and they would have indicated the type of work, the invoices, the purchase order would have been related to that. So once that information was placed in there, it is then drawn into the AppPack. So the Magneto, though, as I was explaining, was for all the departments because it spoke about all areas.
And so in the case of a work order, the work order would go into the Magneto system, which would then allow you to be able to track it in the AppPack accounting system. If there was, let's say, for example, a transmission being done. Is that correct?
The purchase order, yes, would go into the Magneto system.
Now, besides the Magneto system, is there any way to trace the purchase order?
Not that I am aware of.
So what did you do before you introduced the Magneto system in order to trace the purchase order?
We had a system called the Meridian system, which became obsolete.
Now, my last question, and then with regard to this, is, so was there some level of contingency? Because you said it was a web-based system, and web-based systems sometimes fail. I think all of them do, even at financial institutions. So did you have a contingency where you were able to track what occurred if the Magneto system was not up, was not functioning, was not online? Do you have a do you have a contingency system in order to trace the activity of the different departments, especially in terms of purchase orders?
It would be in a manual system, and these would be recorded manually in books, yes.
And your department and you as the financial controller, do you have, or did you have access to the manual system?
Yes.
Chair, could I
And just for,
You want to move on? I just want to finish. We want, sorry, you
I
want to
just
say
want to reiterate that for the Magneto system, there were no manuals for the system, even though it was introduced in 2011. But when I acted as general manager, since July 2018, we then started to get manuals under my responsibility.
Just a couple clarifications on some of the information you shared with Minister Moore. When you sent out your letters with the concerns and copied the general manager, your second, quality assurance, etc., you said you did not receive back a response.
That was correct.
Right. Now, would you also raise these at the management meetings?
That is correct, yes,
Okay.
yes, Minister.
And would that discussion then be reflected in the minutes of those management meetings?
It should be, yes.
Okay, so you can provide information on that as well?
The management minutes would be under the purview of the general manager.
Of the general manager? Okay. Go ahead, Colin. Sorry.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Sue.
The minister's order.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair. Continuing on the matter of the Magneto system, when you raise the concern about lack of information, was it that the information that you didn't get caused you concern about what was being charged for or what work was done? Let me maybe clarify that a little bit. I went on the assumption that when the information goes straight in the face and gets to APAT, that it will trigger some amount to be paid. So that not having the information was the concern that the amount may not relate to the work done, or that you wouldn't have information for auditors. What was the concern for the concern that triggered your response in terms of sending those memos?
The concern was the propriety of the system, because there were no manuals, and hence the persons using the system had to rely on the oral or the verbal training of the person with the system. I had concerns about that generally. So the propriety of the system, the idea of the Magneto system is really a good one, but with the lack of manuals, there was no way to trace anything, and yes, for the auditors and accounting purposes.
Now, not having the manuals, just kind of speaking off the top, because if I don't have manuals but I've been properly trained, then they can still use the system. Without having manuals, I don't recall ever actually reading an APAT manual, but you kind of learn to use the system. So I am still wondering what caused you to go to the length of writing the memos. There is some concern that made you decide this was not just somebody not doing the job, somebody messing up, but you thought it necessary to put it in writing. There must have been something that you thought important enough or grave enough to cause you actually to document this. 2015 and 2017. What would it have been that caused you to think, I need to put this in writing?
Minister, I'm trying to remember, but yes, I agree with you that something would have triggered my concern. But for now, as you know, the person responsible for finance, it was at this time, from what I remember, in 2015, because there were no manuals, and it was concerned that the system, only few persons knew how to use the system. So if that person was not available, the you had to wait on them. So I just wanted to ensure that all information was being captured from what I could remember, because as I said here, this is to allow for greater efficiency in data collection and recording. I also did say, additionally, any discrepancies in invoicing by service providers will more easily be identified and reconciliations completed within a reasonable time. So to answer your question, purely from an accounting point of view, I wanted to make sure that the finance department could verify work that had been done and that all the relevant information was being captured.
Okay, so is it-
Minister, if I may interject, because it relates to the question that is being asked here. If you can't fully recall what drove you to express repeatedly in these memos your concerns, my question is, having addressed concerns to the general manager, the accounting officer, the quality assurance manager, and none of them responded to any of your correspondence, what opinion did you form of that?
My opinion, sir, is that I kept trying because I really
No, your opinion can't be
Oh.
that you kept trying. That you kept trying is the action that you took.
Oh.
But in the situation where there was a persistent lack of response, what opinion did you form of that?
My opinion, sir, would be that there was not great efficiency, I would say.
You put it down to a matter of lack of efficiency. You are the chief financial officer at this time. And you express concerns in these serious ways repeatedly to these senior people. Nobody responds. And you think it is simply inefficiency in the system? You have no other opinion than that?
Mr. Chair, my opinion is that the Quality Assurance Department needed, more efficient management. I was not happy with the management of the Quality Assurance Department.
But the general manager doesn't reply either.
No.
So we need a new general manager then, based on what you're saying.
I don't know, sir.
But you're saying,
at
in the
that time-
absence of a reply from the quality assurance manager, it's a question of inefficiency, you need a change there. The general manager did not reply. You need a change there as well? In your position, I would have been very upset that senior people do not respond to serious concerns expressed by me as a responsible senior official in the place. And I would form an opinion as to why I have to tell you, I would form an opinion, some opinion as to why they did not reply.
Mr. Chair, as I said, I needed to get support from, I would say, general management and the board. And at that time, there was no internal auditor. Again, if we had an internal auditor, which only, again, one came on during the time I was acting as general manager, I would have been given support, but there was no support for me at that time.
Do you have an opinion as to why they remove the responsibility for stores from you?
Yes, sir.
You want to share that opinion with us?
My opinion was that I always wrote, I even wrote the store supervisors, I always write persons asking them to provide the necessary documentation. And because I wasn't given the support, I think that was one. The second reason I have at that time was the store's supervisor, the main person at that time, was the husband of the accountant. So the stores being the accountant actually was supervising that person. So that might have been the reason, another reason for the removal.
I need to try to translate that into something that I clearly understand, are you telling members of the committee that remove the responsibility for stores from your oversight because you were scrutinizing things too closely? You were too efficient?
I would say because of my audit experience, yes, Mr. Chair. Yes, I always would scrutinize, and everybody would say, including the quality assurance manager, nothing could pass me without the necessary level of
So you think you were
authorization.
removed because they knew nothing could pass you?
Yes.
I'm listening to you, Mrs. Sue, and I am putting all that I'm hearing alongside the fact that, as enunciated by you, there were no manuals, so no written procedures in place to manage how the magneto system was used. It sounds to me, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, that you believe that based on what you were seeing, that is to say, insufficient information, issues as it relates to stores, you are seeing these issues and you are not getting responses, and there are no procedures to guide you or to guide the users. It seems to me as though you came to the conclusion that there was either room for funny stuff to happen or that there was actually funny stuff happening. Would that be a correct assumption based on your responses to the questions as well as the matter of not having the procedures?
I would say that, given my accounting and auditing experience, there would be room for indiscretions.
Indiscretions, right. Okay, but you put it a nice way. Where I come from, they may call it stealing or thieving, but I understand the reason why you put it that way. Now, you obviously felt very uncomfortable in the situation. That's the reason why I asked the question initially about you reducing your concerns to writing. It appears to me that your discomfort reached a level that you thought you needed to cover yourself. And so you reduce your concerns to writing. Would that be a correct portrayal of where you were at the time?
Yes, Minister.
Okay. Now, I want to ask a couple of questions about process. Was there anything, given your accounting background and your audit background, any red flags raised about frequency? This would have been in the communication you got. The frequency of repairs to particular units. Anything jumped out at you that made you concerned about what you were actually seeing in terms of having to pay invoices for units over and over, same units, different transmissions? Anything jumped out at you?
The total level of expenditure always jumped out at me. I had serious concerns about the amount of money that we were spending in repairs and maintenance for buses, and especially not seeing the results to be in agreement with the amount that we were spending. The bus availability was not in keeping with that.
Okay. Was there any further concern when I'm not sure if it's the contractor, when additional resource, the additional resource in terms of the particular gentleman who was engaged by the board, by the transport board, any concern that with his engagement, and I am assuming that this is part of the time period, did not produce the results that was expected to be produced?
Yes, Minister, there were concerns, and in fact, I wrote expressing my concerns at one point, and I also wrote to the general manager this time about the concern with the productivity
Could
there as well.
you share some of that with us? The concern to the general manager this thing. While you were looking for it, did you get a response from that written expression of concern?
Yes, I did.
Oh, okay.
No. In October 2014, no, this is not, Mr. Bartholomew came, no? Oh, this was the recondition, oh, these were the transmissions. In relation to I was answering in relation to the transmissions, but in terms of the question with the person who had been employed, yes, I would have sent memos. I don't have them readily to hand, but I also would have written even with some concerns that I have with spending. Yeah. My turn
All right,
is
take your
reminding me
time.
about it. I wrote a memo about the tools for the special project that was addressed to the store supervisor in 2017, April 2017. I have that one here where I indicating that the tools and other items purchased for the special project for which the gentleman was employed should be carefully itemized and recorded. I got a response from the supervisor and I wasn't happy and I wrote again.
The supervisor's response was what? Duly noted, memo received.
I was not happy with so as I indicated, I said here, as I indicated, this I'm quoting in part, in my memorandum dated so-and-so, the list which was submitted to my office is incomplete and needs to be updated to include all tools and equipment received by you and which have not been entered in the Magneto system. Please check with officers to ensure that all the information is there.
And the response was?
The response, before I wrote that again, was that there was no purchase order in the system to check the related tools when they were received in order to update the computer system. However, at your instructions, purchase orders will be created and the goods entered.
Okay, so this is a creating of a purchase order after the purchase has taken place.
Correct.
Okay. Sounds to me as though you had a lot of challenges with how money was being spent all around you, and you were struggling to keep your end of it clean. That's what it sounds to me. My final question, because I've been talking for too long. Did you ever receive were you aware of any instructions to procure services from any specific suppliers of services? Servicing, transmissions, whatever. Any instruction, any direction that quality assurance was taking that suggested they were focused on giving the business to particular suppliers of these products or services?
Yes, and when I asked, I was advised that the particular work was given to a service provider because that service provider was the only person who could perform that service. So, for example, transmissions were given to Transtech and Simpson Motors. Well, Simpson Motors were repairing the newer buses. Very few transmissions, for example, were given to UCAL because UCAL was doing the run-of-the-mill work, for example. So that was the answer that I would have been given when questioned.
Okay, thank you. So it means that that also caused you some degree of concern, and you raised a question and were given that response.
Yes.
What you were saying.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Sue.
Sure.
Sorry, go ahead, Senator.
As part of your function as financial controller, would you have been required to prepare management information for the board?
Not under the last board. I would just produce the financial statements, which would be a statement of income and expenditure, and that would be sent through the general manager.
Okay, so you never had attached then a report, dealing with concerns about, the high maintenance costs, for example. You didn't do that kind of reporting to the board?
I would have requested the accountant who was responsible for the preparation to do variances, significant analysis of variances, and when she did, I would attach that in the document to the board.
Did you attend board meetings?
No, sir, not under the last, when I say the last board, the board of pre-2018. No, sir.
Okay. So I'm concerned that with the very tight revenue and the transport board's heavy reliance on government transfers to keep operating, I was just wondering what your concerns were and how did you make sure that they were getting to the board or getting to the management in regard to, the excessive maintenance costs. You obviously, you raised the issue earlier of your concerns with quality control, so you obviously had some big concerns there. Mm-hmm. Did you get an opportunity to be able to get that sort of information to the board for a reaction?
The responsibility would be that of the general manager who attended the board meetings and who would have been responsible to the board. As I said earlier, I would have raised them at the management meeting for which the general manager chairs and was responsible for, and this is the management meeting refers to management meetings of the line managers. Mm-hmm. So I say that to say that my concerns, if I tell quality assurance I have the concern, it would have been in the hearing of the general manager who I expect would follow through on that to the board.
Now, one other point, can you perhaps just run us through, as financial controller, presumably again you have some responsibility, I would have thought, a pretty major responsibility in terms of making sure that the internal control systems, particularly dealing with things like revenue collection, payments, and so on, are strong enough to mitigate against any unforeseen or unusual circumstances. Could you perhaps run us through the control procedure over payments for us?
the responsibility of? Just wanted to indicate that each department they had, just 1 second. I was looking for a memo which indicated that each department was responsible for their respective policies and procedures for the areas which fell under their responsibility. So I would have been responsible for those policies and procedures which we had for the finance department. The quality assurance department would have been responsible for ensuring the policies relating to the various sections on the quality assurance were updated. So hence, this is why I would always write to ask persons to update their policies and procedures.
Okay, were there any occasions on which you had real concerns that those policies and procedures were not being followed?
Yes, sir, and I referred to them earlier in the documentation, which I will produce, in the letters that I wrote about policies and procedures,
Okay.
they say that.
So, okay, so we will have sight, can we have sight of
Yes,
those?
I have copies which I will
Okay.
share.
Okay. Because obviously, one of our big concerns is the issue of double payments on particular invoices. And so we would be very interested to see if you thought that those policies and procedures were strong enough to prevent those situations from happening.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Mrs. Sue, want to zero in on the matter of issue of checks for payments. And how was that matter? Who approved the checks and who signed?
The policy dictated that checks under $5,000 and payroll checks would be signed by the two persons, the general manager or the deputy general manager at that time, and the FC or the accountant. Now, that was updated, and it was just the HR manager as well could sign payroll checks. This is under $5,000 and payroll. All checks over $5,000 were signed by the chairman of the board and the general manager.
You said something about that was updated. Those under 5,000 were signed by some
Well-
individual. That was updated, you started to say?
At one point, the accountant was removed, and then she was added again to the signing of checks, as well as the marketing and communications manager.
Did you ever have any concern at any time about the issue of any particular check or checks?
I would say yes, yes.
Do we have any documentation where this is highlighted?
I wrote again about the matter, yes, sir.
All right, so we can have that as well?
Yes.
I'm just watching the clock right now.
Yes.
Do you have any knowledge of or any suspicion with respect to any checks issued by the Transport Board for payment for supplies of services other than those which related to the Transport Board?
I had some concerns, Mr. Chairman, about the checks that would have been issued to, I would say, invoices that were requests for payment by the former chairman of the board, and I wrote to the general manager.
All right, we're watching the clock. We're going to come back to that
Yes.
because we're going to have to have you to come back, unfortunately. I apologize for that, but we're watching the clock. We will have you come back to speak more specifically. Last question I have for you for today. Were you ever given any instruction by anybody above yourself, either in the management of the transport board or on the board of directors of the transport board, or anybody in the, how do I put that, in the political arena? Have you ever received at the transport board while you serve in these capacities under which we speak today, were you ever given any instruction by anybody above yourself to do anything that was contrary to the regulations, the policies of the board, as far as you're aware?
Yes.
We can talk to you about that when you come back too, if you don't mind. All right? All right, they're reserving the questions for next time. I want to thank you for coming this afternoon. We're just beyond 5 o'clock, and the agreed cutoff time is 5. Sorry to have kept you in a little this afternoon, but we were dealing with some matters relative to the Auditor General in preparation for the estimates
Okay.
for this year,
Okay.
and that took some time.
Okay.
And thank you, Mr. Su, for accompanying her. And there are some refreshments downstairs. You're welcome to join with us
All right, Chair.
and
Thank
have
you.
something to bite on. All right?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to adjourn. Folks. Second, all in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. We'll set the date subsequently. So we are always. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.